Hello, everybody. Welcome back into the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Alec Aberna. Over there, that's Matt Morrison, then Mike Wolfgang. We're trying something out new today, so we'll see if it works. Let us know how you guys feel about it. Boys, what a great weekend we just had for sports, though.
Oh, good, especially college football.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely nonsense. If you want to tune into our college football rankings release, that will now be on Wednesdays for the Casual Sports Podcast. Mike, once again, will be joining us earlier in the week than normal, so he's only going to be missing this week from the Tuesday broadcast, so we're thankful for that. We're changing up the format a little bit here of our show. Since we got a lot more sports coming in, we're breaking up Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. They're going to change up a little bit. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, Matt and I normally were just breaking up both college football and NFL on the same day. Tuesdays will now be our designated NFL day. Wednesdays for college football. Then our look-aheads for the weekend. Thursday, we're just talking college football. Friday, we're just talking NFL. So that's how our football changes are breaking up a little bit differently here. But let's get into the show today. We got a lot to talk about, a lot to go over. So let's get our question of the day like we normally do here. From last Friday, cornerback Ricky Dixon spent his entire NFL career with the Bengals. True or false? That answer is false. And your question of the day for today, which team gave up the most points in one single quarter in NFL history? Your options: Ravens, Bengals, Lions, Jags, Buccaneers. Leave your answer somewhere. Come back in for tomorrow's show. Boy, MLB postseason is in full effect as I stuttered through that sentence. But Boston currently leads Tampa Bay 2-1. Chicago leads the Astros lead Chicago 2-1. Then the NL is completely tied straight through with San Fran and LA. And then the Brewers and the Braves. Right now, Brewers and Braves going at it. Game 3 of their series live right now at 0-0 in the top of the third on TBS. But how are you guys feeling about these playoffs so far?
I mean, they're pretty exciting. We have the Braves on right here, but I mean, it's exciting. You know, you got the Braves almost about to be eliminated. They're a top seed coming into it. The Red Sox are just off to a good start. You know, they just brought in that the momentum from the wild card game, and they just keep going and going. And then, you know, they're on the Dodgers side.
So the Dodgers, yeah, they're tied. I mean, I like the White Sox last night. I mean, they're able to stay alive. I watched the beginning of that game, and Dylan Cease was starting for the White Sox. And they're kind of fortunate they won that game because they went up early, and then he was getting up too many walks in it. Of course, Astros with their sick lineup, they just took care of it. But yeah, they've all been exciting so far.
That's for sure. And I mean, we got a lot of great series going on, and I think a lot of things that are going to really set the table for the future of baseball. I mean, Tampa Bay is on a fantastic season right now, but here comes Boston right out of the wild card, and all three of these teams were completing all season long for this number one seed, and Tampa Bay gets it, and they took it by a while there at the end, but now here comes Boston in that postseason stretch. I mean, do you think Tampa can now rebound down 2-1 in the series and take this one right back?
I mean, I definitely think Tampa can. I mean, they definitely have the pitching and hitting. That's why they're the number one seed in the American League, like you talked about when you're doing these predictions. They definitely have it, but Boston has a good lineup too, and they also have good pitching. They're also in the playoffs. I mean, obviously they have good pitching overall. So, yeah, I mean, they have to win tonight or it's over. So,
well, that game goes on tonight at 7:07. I mean, it should be a great one. We got a loaded baseball slate here today. I mean, obviously, Brewers, Braves right now, Tampa Bay and the Red Sox at 7, then 9:30, Game 3 of the NLDS between the Giants and the Dodgers. The NL, they're really split right now, one apiece, and those are becoming very competitive matchups. Who do you think is the favorites going into the Game 3s of these series here tonight?
I'd probably say the Braves because they're at home, and they got one on the road. And, I mean, same thing with the Dodgers, too. I mean, they're definitely favored in their game. They're defending champs. They went out a game on the road in San Francisco. So I'd say both home teams, yeah, they're probably the favorites, but you don't know in baseball, like we always talk about. You can play at home, you can be the favorite. It doesn't really matter in baseball. That's why I like the playoffs in baseball. So I'd probably go with the Braves in this game, yeah.
So right now, we're in the middle of these series. Who are the favorites, I think? Obviously, we made our picks at the beginning of the playoffs on who was going to win it. Now that we're a little bit deeper into the playoffs, still the first round, are you guys willing to stick with your picks, or are you thinking, hey, it might be time to change it up?
I'm going to stick with the Braves a little bit, but I mean, the San Fran and Dodgers, I'm not going to go out and pick another team. I'm going to stick with my team. But I think that could go either way this time. I think they're both evenly matched. I mean, the series is tied, so it could go either way.
I mean, I picked the White Sox to beat the Astros. I think you did too, Alex. So
Yeah, I did.
The first 2 games I wasn't looking really good in that because they lost the first 2 games, but they won last night. I still think they can come back.
I think they can come back as well.
They have a good young lineup. They definitely have the pitching to do it. I mean, with the Dodgers, I'm not ready to change them Dodgers yet. They only lost the game. They're still the champs. They're coming home now, picking up a game on the road. The only thing I'm really worried about is the Rays. Like I said, I definitely think they can win tonight and win a Game 5 at home, but you don't know. And I don't think I think it just says here the Astros and the White Sox are postponed tonight.
Oh, okay.
So we'll miss that one. But yeah, I mean, how about you with your picks?
Well, you know what? I'm confident San Francisco, obviously a 1-1 series tie. I mean, I think tonight's going to tell you a lot about which team has a little bit more depth now that you're in that Game 3. You're past your 2 top starters. Now let's see the depth of your bullpen here. You got to go to your 3rd starting pitcher, who on some teams is just as good as those first 2. Other teams, you know, they struggle a little bit more than those first 2 guys would. And now it also is how much stamina have your guys had now that you're in that postseason baseball. It can get a lot more intense. You have a rough schedule. You've already played 164 games plus whatever you're at here in the postseason, or 162 games regular season, and then whatever you've played here so far. And I think this is really where you tell the best players start to separate themselves from the field. You get your biggest moments. They're starting to come out. We've already had, walk-offs, massive home runs, comebacks. We had a ton of comebacks from Game 2s in the series. So I think Game 3 here tonight really tells you a lot about a lot of teams. And I think Game 4 is going forward. I mean, I think you find your favorite out of this Game 3. And normally the team that takes Game 3 has a really good shot of taking the series.
Yeah, and
I'm confident with San Francisco is what I'm saying here.
You even talk about the depth with bullpens, especially with pitching. I mean, that's pretty much what won the White Sox game last night. I mean, they're bringing Kopech after Dylan Cease had a bad. Like I said, he walked a bunch of guys in the top of the second. So you bring in a guy like Kopech who could probably start he could be a starter probably with the White Sox, probably half the teams in the league. So yeah, they relied on their depth and winning that game. That's what a lot of teams are gonna have to do in this position. Like you said, you have to win in different ways. Talk about winning with walk-offs and your depth with pitching and getting timely hitting. You have to win in different ways, and that's what the White Sox did last night.
Yeah. And I don't know if you heard about this. This came out 20 minutes ago, but this game is canceled now due to the rain. But White Sox pitcher Ryan Tepera thinks that the Astros are cheating again.
Well, it's funny you can say something about that because there was a lot of controversy in their prior game. I believe it was one of the Chicago White Sox batters. He was coming out of the right-handed batter's box, running down the first base line, and he was way inside on the infield grass. The throw came in from first to home because they were trying to get the guy going towards the bag, and I think they called batter's interference on it because he was running in the infield grass. So, I mean, I think you get to that point here in the postseason, you're going to get a little bit of cheating going both ways because you're trying to get every advantage you can, right? You're trying to get that extra step, just get your opponent a little bit off because you're facing, I don't care what the past is, you're facing a guy that, even if they got the signals that were coming in, still hit the ball. And that's the hardest thing to do in sports, is to hit a baseball going 100 miles an hour or hit a massive sweeping curve that, looks like it's going to be a fastball to start, then it's only going 60 miles an hour and makes you, hit yourself in the back of the head. So, as much as you want to say cheating or whatnot, I mean, obviously something you look at into the postseason, that's for the MLB's front office to look at and not really for us to worry about. At the moment, you know what? Accuse your opponent of cheating all you want. You have to go out there and win. You have to perform, whether they're cheating or not. This is it. You've played 162 games against different people every night. Circumstances don't change. You go out there, you hit a ball, you throw the ball, you catch the ball. Baseball and its fundamentals don't change. If your opponent's cheating, that just means you have to give even more to try and win that game.
I mean, we talk about the Astros, how, I know people are always going to give them slack for cheating, which they should because they did cheat. But when the cheating first happened, people were like, oh, these guys aren't going to be good because they cheated. But that's stuff was years removed.
They can still hit.
As much as I don't like Altuve and Correa doing that stuff, they're still good. I mean, they are. They have one of the best lineups in baseball in terms of hitting and making contact. So, I mean, and all that stuff's out the window. They're still producing.
Since they cheated once, it's so easy for other teams to cause their poor play on that. Oh, they cheated again. Oh, they cheated again. We're not.
Well, you could say the same thing now. Red Sox are up 2-1 over the over the Rays. They were in a similar cheating scandal too with the same people. So, I mean, they're up 2-1. Oh, Red Sox are cheating, freak out mode. I mean, it's not happening because Tampa believes they're a better team, so maybe this is just Chicago showing insecurity.
Yeah.
I think it is.
I mean, yeah, and we're not going to see that game tonight because of the rain, but
yeah. Tomorrow, it says it's going to start tomorrow at 1.
Yeah, so tomorrow we'll go down. We'll check back in. Tomorrow also NHL starts for the first time. There are 2 games on ESPN tomorrow night. Matt and I will talk about that when we get to it tomorrow. That'll be towards the end of our show, so probably around 2:50 tomorrow. But guys, next up here, NFL gave us some crazy moments. Browns and Chargers gave us one of the most highly explosive games in the NFL season so far. 42-47. Chargers win it in the final 2 minutes. Baker Mayfield, 23 of 32, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns. Chubb on the ground averaged 7.7 yards per carry with a touchdown on 161 yards. Kareem Hunt, 61 yards and 2 touchdowns. David Njoku finally finding the tight ends, 149 receiving yards for him with a touchdown as well. On the other side, Justin Herbert, I mean, he's back to his form that he was in last season. He's got a 4-1 squad, 26 of 43, 398 yards for him, 4 touchdowns. And Austin Eckler on the ground did what they needed to, 66 yards for 2 touchdowns. Mike Williams was their leading wide receiver with 165 yards. And the Browns became the first team to lose, scoring 40-plus points without a turnover in NFL history. I believe 402 teams have put up that stat. 401 have won the game. So, I mean, you look at the Browns' offense, they were perfect. You couldn't ask them to do any better. You can't ask an offense to score 42 points and expect to lose a game. They lost it in the final 2 minutes. Defense, though, has to play better for the Browns. I mean, I think that's really kind of the point of this offseason was this offense looks just fine. It's just the defense has struggled. The cornerbacks, they haven't ever been able to find any consistent play since they brought in Denzel Ward. He seems to be the only guy on any given week that you can count on to actually make good plays. There were a few controversial moments in that game. More specifically, a terribly non-called pass interference in the end zone, which would have given the Browns the ball, obviously, at the 2-yard line and a great chance to score. I mean, there was some blatant pass interference in that moment that just was not called. But, I mean, either way, defense can't allow 47 points and expect to win in the National Football League.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think about it?
I mean,
one of the best games of the weekend. Right?
Yeah.
Probably in the NFL was the best game of the weekend.
Oh, maybe. But scoring points-wise, yeah, definitely. And, you know, when you put up that many points, I mean, you look back at that game, you're like, what did we do wrong? You know, you did almost everything right. You scored.
And Browns defense even got turnovers too, but it didn't matter. There was just 1 turnover, and it was a fumble from the Chargers side. So, I mean, the defense, yeah, they got the turnover, but the 47 points, you look at this game, and you're just like, man, if we just had a little bit of defense, that's a game the Browns win, and they're sitting at 4-1 instead of the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you'll talk about this too, Alex, if you're a Browns fan. We're kind of, I guess you could say disappointing because the last 2 weeks our defense really looked good. I mean, I know against the Bears offense, the Bears aren't special on offense, but I mean, the Vikings are still formidable on offense. They still have some pieces there that they did a good job stopping. So it's kind of disappointing to see them, give all those points against the Chargers. But I mean, how about the Chargers offense? Give them credit.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think you have to give a lot of credit, especially to Justin Herbert. I mean, I think we kind of talked about it preseason. We loved what he did last season with the Chargers. He was probably the #1 rookie quarterback last season, and he was just off the charts. I know he was flying up fantasy football rankings this season, a lot of hype. He started off kind of slow, and I think you were like, well, you know what? Let's not freak out yet. This is Justin Herbert. We know this is a guy that produced in Oregon. He produced in his rookie year in the NFL, and now here we see year 2. Week 5, he gets right back into that flow. I mean, you put up nearly 400 yards with 4 touchdowns, and you find your #1 target in Mike Williams, and you get him the ball over and over and over. Can you imagine if this Chargers squad can get even more production from Austin Eckler on the ground? He was only averaging 3.3 yards per carry. If you can get a guy like that up to, say, 4.5, this is a team that's scoring 50 a weekend, and that's something we're only really seeing out of one team in the NFL, and the Bills. So the Chargers can put themselves in the same conversation with the Bills. Offensively, they still need their defense to get a lot of work, because you look at the Chargers in this game and you're like, man, we played great on offense, we still almost lost the football game. You know, you allow your defense allows 42 points. They only get, I believe, let me check here, 1 sack on Baker Mayfield. But I think the only positive you look at from that defense, 4 of 12 third down efficiency for the Cleveland Browns offense. They couldn't convert there. Browns just 1 for 3 offensively on 4th down, and they were forced to 3 punts in that game. So you look at this, the Chargers defense had to be on the field a lot. Browns were ahead by 13 minutes in time of possession in this game. So you look at that big disparity. This Chargers defense was left out there to dry a lot. I mean, you got to give them credit for fighting through, but at the same time, you got to get off the field faster. You cannot, allow your opponent to score 40 plus either. I mean, I think it goes the same way for both defenses here. They both looked okay, but they need to be a lot better. And I think we know that they can both play a lot better. Just 2 explosive offenses this week. And if you're looking at that third down efficiency and fourth down efficiency, Chargers 3 for 3 on 4th downs and 6 for 13 on 3rd downs. They punted just 3 times, and the Browns defense got 2 sacks. So, I mean, this was just a great game, I think, from both offenses. Defenses, though, have to set the table in these kind of games.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, that's probably the one thing you got to look at the Chargers that disappointed with them, because last week they played against the Raiders. Defense looked okay against the Raiders. So, I mean, it's definitely a work in progress for them, and that's something they need to fix. But they were able to find a way to win it yesterday. So.
And you know what? Sometimes it's all that matters, finding the way to win. I mean, they got this game-winning touchdown with 1:43 left on the clock. I believe T.J. Hawkinson literally got dragged into the end zone by the Browns defenders because they were trying to get the ball back and not allow the Chargers to run out the clock and, run it a few times at the goal line. So, I mean, it was a good game plan there by the Browns to literally let them score to take the lead, because or else they would have sat there on the 2-yard line, kicked the field goal as time expired, and the Browns wouldn't have had a shot. The Browns gave themselves a shot. And now I think this is where you start looking ahead. Multiple times this season, Baker Mayfield has been put in this 2-minute drill, and he has not been able to, get through it. He started off week 1 against the Chiefs in that 2-minute drill. He throws the interception to end it. Here this time against the Chargers, they can't get it done in that 2-minute drill. They lose the football game. Baker had a fantastic game. Chubb had a great game. But in those final 2 minutes, it doesn't matter what you did in the other 58. You got to convert in the end.
I think that's something that's kind of separating Baker. I guess maybe the one thing you may be criticizing about for people that don't like him, he's a good quarterback. We all know he's a good quarterback, but he's had a couple of chances this year to go on these drives to potentially win the game and put the game away. With the 2-minute drill, like you're saying, he hasn't really been able to do it. So I guess that's my only knock on Baker so far, because other than that, he's good.
Yeah.
But I guess that's for the critics, that's what they have.
I don't know about the play calling at the end of that game either. I mean, a couple Hail Marys when they got to the 50, they still had time to get a couple more plays to get closer. I mean, I don't know about the deep ball call at the end.
Well, when you got a guy like Odell Beckham and, Schultz out there, 2 guys that have shown plenty of deep ball threats, either with Beckham in his career or Schultz early in the season, and you have those 3 massive tight ends, I like the deep ball call. I don't like when they called it. You get 1 or 2 yards or 1 or 2 first downs closer, you get out of bounds, you work it quickly, and then you launch it down the field, just as you were saying. They called that too early, and I think it was one of those moments Stefanski was looking at. It's like, Baker Mayfield has the arm. I know he can get it there, and I know we have the guys to get it there. So I think he was hoping that the defense gets a little bit more stretched out, and you get, an extra 10 yards for your wide receivers to create that separation. It just never came, and then you do it multiple times. The defense is ready for it. If it doesn't work once, you have to go somewhere else, find something else, set up a screen, or make it look like you're going for 4 verticals or Hail Mary, whatever you want, and then just have one guy cut it off early and do a slant route or a screen. So that now you're pushing the entire defense downfield. You throw it underneath that entire defense, you're picking up 20 yards and you can go out of bounds, and you're either setting yourself up if you're in a field goal situation well, or in this case, you needed a shot at the end zone, and then you're not having to run, a Hail Mary where you're just throwing up a prayer literally into the end zone. You can run an actual play offensively, and that's just something the Browns couldn't do in that situation. And as you're saying, that play calling is just a little bit off there. And I think you look at this entire game, it's a great game from both sides, but you look at that final 2 minutes, and that's where the Browns can improve a lot going forward. I mean, I think everyone wants to talk about this squad as a Super Bowl team until the Browns can prove they can win those final 2 minutes. I don't think you can say that, because every other elite team, this is my team. I'm a Browns fan. I've been raised in Northeast Ohio my whole life. My family is brown and orange, besides my mom, but that's not the point. My mom is a Steelers fan.
Really?
Yes, my mom is a Steelers fan, but my entire family, besides her, is a Cleveland Browns fan. I was raised a Browns fan, and that's how I've been taught my whole life. But, I have to be realistic here with it. I want my Browns to win a Super Bowl as much as anybody else wants their team to win it, maybe even a little bit more. But at the same time, you have to be realistic here. If the Browns can't win in those final 2 minutes, if they can't show any sort of jump in the final 2 and score points, you will not win an NFL championship. You won't win more than one playoff game. That's what you saw when they faced Kansas City last year in the playoffs. You got down to that end of that ball game, and it didn't matter what you'd done in the rest of it because you couldn't finish.
And I think for me as a Cowboy fan, at first, like, Dak wasn't really known for that. But over the last couple of years, like you're saying, it takes a while for guys to be able to do this in the clutch. But that's why he's kind of separated himself, because he is able to do that. He's a leader, and I think Baker is a leader, but he just needs to learn how to do that in the last couple of minutes.
And, I think you look at this right now and you go, could the Browns have won this, say, if Jarvis Landry was back in that offense? I mean, he is a key piece to that wide receiving core, and I think he really opens up the field for the rest of the wide receivers. Obviously, Njoku still had a fantastic game. You're not going to take that away. But I think Baker, when he has Jarvis out there, Baker doesn't have to be that leader on the field every time, because Jarvis is that experienced guy. He's gone from crap teams, came into a crap team, and turned them into a contender here. And I think you honestly have to look at Jarvis Landry as the missing piece right now of the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I mean, he's part of their offense. That's the guy that Baker is going to. So we'll see once they get everybody back healthy. They haven't had everybody healthy, like, all at once. So I guess once that happens, we'll judge them off that. So.
How about this team that doesn't have anybody healthy, but despite that, only have one loss in the season, 19 injuries in the Ravens, just beat the Colts. They take on the Colts tonight, not beat the Colts. They probably will, but 1-3 Colts. How about this game coming up? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue against that. They're probably going to come out and win. Carson Wentz, I mean, they can find his weaknesses pretty easily, especially with that pretty strong Ravens defense. But maybe Carson Wentz can figure some stuff out. You gotta get the running back on. That's what I think. The run game is going to decide this game for the Colts. That's how they're going to be most successful.
I mean, we got a matchup of the old teams going together. I mean,
Baltimore,
Colts team Baltimore, so that's a headline. But yeah, as far as the game, I mean, it's probably I'm not making predictions yet, but it's probably going to be Ravens tonight.
Probably.
I just haven't seen.
We're not making picks just yet, but I think we will get to that, and I think we're all going to go the same way. But I think you have to look at this game a little bit more than just raw face. You go Carson Wentz, he's been in some big moments. He knows how to win football games, and if they can get Jonathan Taylor going on the ground and through the air, if they can really mix this up, they have a lot of wide receivers that I just don't think have found themselves. You look at Paris Campbell, a guy that came out of Ohio State with one of the best 40-yard dash times in the combine. He was explosive, fantastic route runner, and could run past anybody in college. We have yet to see that so far in the NFL. But with a quarterback like Carson Wentz, who we know can put it on the money when he has to, and a guy that, if you're betting odds, you're going to bet on Carson Wentz to win a football game quite often, because we know he can do it. He's driven teams to the playoffs, despite the fact that he got injured in those, and he's not clutch sometimes in those games. We know he can get teams to the big moments. Right now, at a team that's 1-3, this is your biggest moment of the season. It's time to turn it around. You look at the Steelers. Big Ben, what separates him from Mason Rudolph or Dwayne Haskins, the guys behind him on the bench? When you need him the most, you can count on him, and that's what happened here. The Cards are down. You're 1-3. What do? Your quarterback steps up. You win a football game. We'll talk Steelers later on here, but you look at this and you go, Carson Wentz can win in those moments. Lamar Jackson can win in those moments. I think it's time the Colts defense needs to step up here. They're going up against the top defense of their own with the Ravens. Their defense has kind of struggled. But now you just have to lock in on Lamar Jackson. They still don't really have a running back. Those wide receivers are off the charts. I mean, Lamar to Sammy Watkins is becoming a lethal combo, and he still has Hollywood Brown. I mean, it is a dangerous situation to go up against this Ravens offense. But the Colts are desperate. And desperation, drives winning. It drives that innovation on offense, innovation on defense. When your back is against the wall, you rely on your guys like Carson Wentz to come out there and lead your football team, and that's what Indianapolis is going to need here tonight.
I mean, yeah, of course we're desperate. We expected somewhat more than what they're giving us right now coming into the season. We thought, Carson was going to come in and be a different guy, which maybe he has, but, coming off from the Eagles, because he really hasn't been, the next guy in Philadelphia. But, yeah, we expect more from him. I guess that's why they're desperate. And, I mean, maybe they have it on their side tonight. We'll see what happens.
Well, all right. Let's make our predictions then. Colts versus Ravens. It's pretty lopsided here, and I think where we're all going to go with it. Before we get into predictions, how about we give a quick rundown, actually, of our results from last week's. All their scores here. So we were all 1-for-1 in boxing. We all picked Fury. You guys were closer with taking him in 12. He won via the TKO in the 11th round. We'll talk about that after, or actually we'll talk about it before we get into college football up next. But let's go down here. In the NFL, in last place, Matt Morrison 11-4. In second place, Mike Wolfgang 12-3. And in first, myself at 13-2. I only picked the Jets to beat Atlanta and the Browns to beat the Chargers, so I think I'll live with that one. I'll live with those two that I got wrong. Mike, you picked the Jets, Bengals, and Raiders. We'll talk Green Bay Bengals on a different day as well. And then Matt, you picked Seattle, the Jets, the Bengals, the Browns, and the Raiders. So off week for you in the NFL.
Still a good record.
Not bad. You know, hey man, you were plus 500 this week. I think that's great things for you.
Yep.
Okay, college football. In last place, Matt Morrison at 4-6, Mike Wolfgang at 5-5 in second, and myself in first at 7-3.
5-5. That's 500. I'll take it.
And so that wraps up our total from last week. Matt, you finished last place, 15-10 in totals. Mike, 17-8. Great job, man. 17-8, your second place. But myself in first, 20-5. I hit the 20 mark there for positive wins. I think that's a big step up for me. You know, 17-7 last week. So, Mike, you were 17-7 as well. So you got to step it up, man.
I got that. It's a good record, but I want to get it up more. So we'll see.
Matt, great job. You got one more win. You had 14-10 last week. You were 15-10 this week. So,
all right.
How about we get into tonight then? So, Matt, last place. Go first.
Tonight? Oh, the Ravens are going to win.
Yeah, okay. What about you, Mike?
I say Ravens by 14.
I will go Ravens by 17 here tonight. I don't think it's really going to be close. I think it might look good in the beginning, but, I mean, it's just a matter of time. Lamar Jackson's he's that good, and this is such a fantastic offense, and their defense has been great on the season thus far, so I think you just have to give them the edge going into that, and you just look at it in total, and you're like, man, they're just so good.
Yeah.
So,
pretty good.
All right, Matt, this was what you were really hyped up for this past weekend. Wilder Fury Part 3. Why don't you give us a little bit of a breakdown since you were the one into this? You've been into boxing for a while now.
I mean, I couldn't watch it because it was on pay-per-view, and, you know, my dad's not into that stuff. But I was watching highlights of it this morning, and, man, Fury really came back. Like, he got knocked down twice in the same round. He's like, no way, you don't knock me down twice. Just came out flying punches. And you know what? I think the problem was Wilder, I mean, he's this built kind of guy. Like if you've seen him, I mean, he's built. And I think that's why he lost. I think he had too much muscle, too much weight, and he ran out of breath real quick. Where Fury, and he just lost the weight. You know, Fury's not really the muscular guy. He's fast and he can punch.
And he's huge.
Yeah, he's a huge guy as well. So he has to keep a lot of that weight off because he's huge. And I think that's where he beat him. He wore him down. You know, he let him use his body as like a punching bag. He could take the hits because he's a bigger kind of guy. He just took those hits, wore him down, and just came out and really showed him it in the 11th round. He really got Wilder. Pretty good.
I mean, I think you really like this boxing fight from Fury. I mean, still undefeated. He does have the one draw to his credit. But, you know, as you were saying, he just let Wilder get exhausted on him. And then Fury just takes him right into it, pushes him up against the ropes, and just keeps taking it right to him, takes the fight to him the whole time, doesn't let him breathe at any moment in this matchup. And you go back to that fourth round, Wilder is now looking like he's the guy, you know, drops Fury down twice in the round. First time Fury has ever gone down twice in the same round in his entire boxing career. Wilder gets him down, and I think you got to give credit to Wilder in this fight, you know, taking it to Fury, bringing him down, doing something no other boxer has ever done to him. And I think that just goes to credit now on the other side of that, just how good Tyson Fury is at boxing. The fact that he'd never been dropped twice in the same round, and then once it happens to him, he still comes back, takes it another 7 rounds, and wins by TKO.
Wore him down.
I mean, he wore him down, and then, you deliver those final blows, and I think one of those falls down for Fury. You kind of look at it and go, I think he just wanted a minute there to, fall down, because he just kind of shrugs it off and then goes down like, oh, I'm down on the ground, look at me. I think he just wanted a minute to breathe.
And he took the 8 count as well. He just wanted time to breathe. Yeah.
It's not a bad strategy sometimes, and he still came out on top on all 3 scorecards. If this had gone another round and gone to the score table's decision, it would have gone Fury's way as well. He was leading on all 3 scorecards in that 11th round here, as on one of them up 95-91, the other one 94-92, and the final one 95-92. So, I mean, this was just an inhuman performance from Tyson Fury. He just looks like a beast, a legend. And, I think he's starting to cement himself even more as one of those all-time greats. And I think we talked about it before this fight of just the status that this was going to bring the winning boxer.
Absolutely. Mike, any insight here?
I didn't see the fight.
You didn't see the fight? Any highlights?
But from what you're going
Yeah.
on,
Pretty insane.
Well, we'll see. We'll talk next big boxing fight when it comes up. Matt's going to stick on that one for us, as he's our in-house boxing guy. He's the one getting into it. Man, you punch the bags a bit too, don't you?
A little bit. I'm not that good, but it's a good workout.
Well, you're 6'5". Maybe you can be the guy that can give him a run for his money. Go up there, get those long arms. You want to fight Fury next?
No.
We're getting a streak of like YouTubers going up against it. Hey, we're technically YouTubers. We've been on it.
We're YouTubers. Well,
Matt Morrison, Tyson Fury, 2025.
Watson, I want to take you on. Let's go.
we'll be the cover now.
Yeah. Let's go.
I'll do play-by-play for Matt dying in one round. Sure, that'll be quick.
I think I can. I don't even want to give myself one round.
No, I mean, you wouldn't last the round. I'm just getting paid to show up at that point. It's going to be one and done. It's going to be one punch, and you're going to be on your ground like, oh, no, what have I done?
What have I done?
All right, how about we get into this one here? Alabama, Texas A&M. We didn't think this was going to be the upset we were talking about, but here come now the now number 21 ranked Texas A&M Aggies into this game at a 3-2 record, 5-0 Crimson Tide. It's Nick Saban against a former coordinator. He's never lost until now. A game-winning field goal. Texas A&M upsets number 1 Alabama, and how about that? Nick Saban takes his first loss to a former coordinator.
I mean, first of all, they almost blew it. They were up by a lot, and Alabama almost came back into it, but they held up enough just to hold them off. And this is definitely a shocking performance. I mean, we talked bad on A&M all year.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we haven't seen anything from this offense that has even remotely looked like a team that could go up against Alabama, put up 31 points, and, let alone their defense, which looked okay. But, I mean, they have been decimated. They come off a loss to Mississippi State, the team Alabama takes on this Saturday. And now you got to look at that like, well, Mississippi State beat A&M by 4. A&M beat Bama by 3. Well, hold on one second. Are we now pulling upset alert on Alabama on back-to-back weekends? Some I think would, freak out and say yes, but it's Nick Saban, so I think you calm it down a little bit, because this is a guy that, has barely had seasons where he gets less than 1 or 2 losses. He doesn't go 9-3 but once in the last decade. So I don't think it's push the button freak out time, but I think you do now look at A&M in a different light, right? You look at that now as a 4-2 team, and I think they have that, win that puts them back inside the top 25, and I didn't mind that they got back up there. I didn't agree with their preseason ranking, being in, right there at the top 10, then they drop off, they win by 3 against Colorado in an awful football game. It's 10-7, and they're kind of sitting middle of the range, down at 17, then they lose to Mississippi State, finally drop out, and you're like, finally, thank goodness that's gone. And then here they come right back. You take them out, you count them out, and here come the Aggies. They win the football game. It was at home, and I think that was the tide turner in the end of this one. You go down into the stat book for this game, and 41-38, Alabama scores just 10 in the first half, 28 in the third and fourth quarters combined, compared to A&M's 17 in those final 2 and 24 in the first 2. Bryce Young for Bama, 28 of 48. He didn't have his best performance, but he still had 369 yards, 3 touchdowns, the 1 interception. And then Brian Robinson, 24, 147 yards on the ground. Fantastic game for him. And Jamison Williams, the Ohio State transfer, continues to be their leading wide receiver. I loved him at Ohio State. I was very upset when I heard he was transferring up because he is one of the number one wide receivers going to be upcoming here in the NFL draft. Whenever he decides to go, he's going to be right up there with the rest of the Ohio State Buckeye crew he would have been around, but he had 10 receptions, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. John Metchi, another big Alabama name that's been kind of waiting his time. He was behind Waddle and Adams last season, and he was still putting up great numbers. You look at Metchi in this game, 88 yards, and Roydell Williams with the other touchdown through the air. DeMarco Helms had 1 interception in this game, although Alabama couldn't get a sack, and I think that's something you look at in this game and you go, well, that's not something you expect. No sacks for this Alabama defense on the A&M quarterback in Zach Calzada, who I think just had his greatest performance in A&M history. Obviously, the replacement for Kellen Mond. A lot of hype on him coming into the season, and he lives up to it here. 21-31, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. If you're not the favorite quarterback, if you're not the Heisman frontrunner, that's a great day for you. When we talk a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, that's what you want out of your everyday quarterback. That is good. But when we're on Bryce Young's case here, as the front runner for the Heisman, you go 3-to-1. You look human. You have 20 incompletions. You put up 369 yards, but you have those great wide receivers to do it against the defense that, frankly, on the season has looked average. I think this hurts Bryce Young's standings as a Heisman front runner. He's still up there, and Matt and I, you and I, and actually Mike, we'll go ahead and talk mid-season Heisman watch on Wednesday's show, so we're not going to get too much in that now, but I think that kind of hurts him. And this wasn't a game that, A&M really blew this thing out of the water at any point. On the ground, Isaiah Spiller, just 2.7 yards per carry with a touchdown on 46 yards. They didn't have anybody over 90 yards receiving. Anis Smith had 85 with 2 touchdowns. Jalen Weidermeyer had 73 with 1 touchdown. And then everyone else was, right there as you expect them to be in the 40s to, 5s yards. The defense had multiple sacks in this game. They got 4 on Bryce Young, got the interception. Then you get Davon Akane on the 96-yard kick return for a touchdown. And I think it was the hidden points, right, that you see this completely different style of football that caught Alabama off guard. When special team scores touchdowns, you win the football game a lot easier.
Yeah, this game, like you said, definitely was a shock. And I got this a week early on this one. Remember when they played Ole Miss, I was like, Lane Kiffin's going to be the first assistant.
Right.
I was wrong. But
I thought about that when they went. I was like, oh, Mike, you were just one off.
I was one off. But,
Jumbo Fisher, man. Well, he was an assistant from that LSU?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes to LSU. Yeah.
She's still undefeated against Bama, former coordinator, so keep that in mind. We'll put that'll be the next stat up on ESPN.
We'll take this one because it's never happened before anywhere, so we'll take it.
What do you guys think this does now to the college football playoff, though? Alabama goes from number 1. We'll do our playoff rankings on the Wednesday show, but how about we get a little bit of a preview to what might be coming out on that one? What do you guys think? How are you going to drop? How are you going to rate Alabama right now with a loss to an unranked team? I mean, before I let you go into this, we've talked before about losing, here. We talked Penn State's potential loss, which we'll get to here later on. If Oklahoma loses, Ohio State, they lost. They were up there as a top 3 team. They fall back nearly out of the rankings. In fact, they fell out of the top 10 a few weeks ago in the regular, AP rankings. They've worked their way back up, and now they're sitting there at number 6, I believe it is, behind Oklahoma. And, I think this is a chance now. Does Alabama going from number 1, do you give them the benefit of the doubt, keep them in that top 4? Or is it something that you might see them fall out of that top 5?
Well, I told Matt, we were talking about this earlier, and I know we're going to talk about Penn State shortly, but I think this actually kind of hurts Penn State because, like you said, I mean, maybe Alabama loses again, but I doubt it. I don't bank on them losing again. I mean, led by Nick Saban, they don't lose often, so I don't really see the else on the schedule that they can lose to, but we don't know. We didn't think they'd lose to A&M. But, I mean, we show that they're willing to put Alabama in. I'm not saying they're biased or anything because it's Alabama. They definitely deserve it. But we show that they normally tend to put Alabama in over some other teams. So I think it potentially hurt Penn State, and maybe, same thing with Ohio State. If they split up again, or if Alabama goes another wall, it could hurt teams like them.
It could. It really could. I'd say that.
Well, I think you do talk about that a little bit, but now I think it gets rid of that conversation of 2 SEC teams making it into the championship potentially. You could lose that factor now. Georgia, if they go undefeated and run the table, and then beat Alabama in the SEC championship game, Bama's out. There's no chance for them to get in.
Yeah.
The only chance now, Alabama has to win out, and they have to beat Georgia. But let's not look ahead too far on Georgia. They have Kentucky coming up now. You know, in the biggest matchup, Matt, I know you love this team. We'll give the preview later on this week. But Georgia has an undefeated Kentucky coming into their hometown, and I think that becomes the biggest matchup now in the SEC. Kentucky at Georgia this Saturday. Georgia has to win out. If they lose one now, then we're guaranteed to just have one SEC team potentially in the finals.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's something that a lot of people in college football would like to see again. Yeah, I don't think we want those two SEC teams in there, despite the fact they might be the two best teams in Alabama and Georgia. I think a lot of times we get caught up in, oh, well, this team would obviously beat this team. You know, Alabama, oh, no doubt that they would go in there and, you know, smack around a team like Cincinnati. You know, you get a lot of people like that. That's not how we have to view rankings. When we go out here and put ranking, it's, what have you shown me on the season? Where do you argue in your season so far? Are you a team that should be top 4 because of what you've done? Or are you a team that could be top 4 because of what you haven't done? And I think that's where you look at Alabama, and you look ahead of them in the rankings in this AP poll, and you go, oh, well, they could, you know, smack around Ohio State, Penn State, Iowa, Cincinnati. You do all that, and you go, yeah, but they should have smacked around A&M, and they lost.
Yeah.
So now you give that what if. It's like, no, we don't need to talk what ifs because we saw what happened. What happened is you lost to an unranked team. And that's the reality of this situation right now for Alabama. And I think that's where you talk teams like Penn State, Iowa, their loss, you know, well, mainly Penn State, Ohio State, their loss is to a top 10 opponent, you know, or a top opponent that might be in the top 15. In Oregon's case, if they lose to Cal, they'll still be up there because of that win over Ohio State. And since Ohio State's lost, they have looked like the Ohio State of old. After that Tulsa game, CJ Stroud sits out for the Akron game, and then these last 3, they have been phenomenal, 50-plus points, and it has been blowout after blowout after Ohio State. Penn State, a very shallow loss to Iowa in a game that could have gone either way. I think that saves Penn State the fall that Alabama just suffered. You lost to a team that, you know, spoiler alert for me, I don't have them sitting at 2 or 3. I don't have Iowa there. I have Iowa as my number 1 team because they have the best win in college football on the season.
They do. They really do.
And like you said, I mean, it's going to be a beat-up in the Big Ten because, I mean, for Penn State to get in, they're going to have to go to the Big Ten championship game and win. That means they're going to have to beat Michigan, Ohio State, and Michigan State.
Can't afford to lose again.
Same thing for Ohio State. They're going to have to do the same thing, too. I mean, they have to beat Penn State. They have to beat Michigan. They have to beat Michigan State, too, as well. I mean, they're all going to beat up on each other. So with that coming down, yeah, it's going to be a good race at the end.
And I think this was Iowa's buy-in game, right? They just bought their ticket to the Big Ten championship so long as they don't stumble up. They've got it. They can afford one loss in the Big Ten West now, and depending on who it's to, Purdue perhaps could be their biggest challenger. But, you know, so long as Iowa loses maybe one or none, this is a team that's just punched their ticket into the Big Ten West before we reach the halfway point of the college football season.
Yeah.
And if Penn State wins out, you know, they'll be in that championship and get the.
It's going to be hard to do. But
yeah,
it's going to be really hard, and we have not had an injury update yet on Sean Clifford. We're still waiting on that. And he came out with a wrap around his right arm, his throwing arm. So I think you got to look at that. Looking ahead, you need him healthy. Luckily, bye weeks are coming up here for a lot of teams in the Big Ten, and I think Penn State has their bye week this week.
This week they have a bye week, and then they play Illinois. So.
Right, so perhaps 2 bye weeks, or just that, a chance to get that young quarterback a new shot. We'll talk about Penn State here in a minute. Let's go on to the Red River Shootout. And man, did this one just blow up the scoreboard. 2 future SEC teams combining for 103 total points in this football game. And what an epic finale it was. I think Spencer Rattler enters the transfer portal this offseason. And I think it's time for Caleb Williams in Oklahoma. He just put himself as the front runner to the Heisman for next season.
What a performance he put on. They were down, we watched that game, 3 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this looked like it was over. Texas was blowing this thing out of the water. I think it became like 28-7. And then here comes Caleb Williams. They pull Spencer Rattler. 2nd year in a row, Spencer Rattler has been pulled out of the Red River Showdown for a crappy performance. And I think this is the end of the Rattler era in Oklahoma as we see it. He might get another shot, but Caleb Williams is going to be getting every single chance from now on in that stadium.
I mean,
he's unbelievable.
To me, we talked about A&M. We talked about him earlier, and I know you were talking about him all year, Alex, saying, they should be ranked as high as they are. I kind of look at Oklahoma the same way right now. They haven't really done anything that's impressed me all year.
Me either.
No, they really haven't, and I think this is the game that kind of maybe turns that around a little bit for Oklahoma because they showed they were willing to change. They were sticking with Spencer Rattler. He went 9 of 16, 112 yards. You'll live with that. Not in this game, though. With one interception, you pull him out. You bring in Caleb Williams, whose father played for Texas in the biggest game of your season thus far. He goes 15 of 24, 211 yards with 2 touchdowns, and then on the ground, going up against the number 1 running back in college football, your back has a better day. Kennedy Brooks, 25 carries, 217 yards and 2 touchdowns. Oh, not to mention Caleb Williams on the ground, 4 carries for 88 yards and a touchdown. Spencer Rattler also had a touchdown on the ground, but he also had -9 rushing yards. But 136 yards through the air for Marvin Mims. Jeremiah Hall with 69 yards. You look at Oklahoma in this game, they showed you everything you wanted from them besides defense now. And I think that's kind of been the question mark all season. But now that they've shown that they're willing to change, much like we were saying with Ohio State, with that defense, you wouldn't want to put them in the top 5, but now they've shown willingness to change. They removed Kerry Combs as the play caller. He's still defense coordinator, but not the play caller for that defense. And now that defense looks 100 times better. Showing the willingness to change, in my eyes, and I think a lot of voters' eyes, will remain you in that top 10 and keep you as a high ranking because you're willing to adapt in situational football. We've seen it from guys like Saban, Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day, Urban Meyer, these mega coaches, willingness to change and make those halftime adjustments, make those adjustments in the middle of the game when everyone would say, just stick to your game plan, right? Stick to your game plan, see what happens. Willingness to change, I think, shows a lot of people we're ready to contend. And I think that's where Oklahoma is in this game. You went up against the number 1 running back in college football, and Bijan Robinson. He had 137 yards on the ground with a touchdown. Casey Thompson, 20 of 34 for 388 yards and 5 touchdowns in this game. And this was just an epic performance going both ways, I think, offensively. And I think you know that. This is a game that is offensive-based. Firepowers, explosions. I mean, you look last 3 seasons, this is a game that's averaging about 100 combined points per game every single year. And so I think this is a game you look at for Oklahoma. You were expected for this to be a shootout. That's why it's called what it is, right? This isn't a game that's going to be a defensive battle. This is an offensive showcase. And I think that's why you leave Oklahoma where they are right now. And, I even gave them a little bit of a bump from last week. I liked the performance, and they had people fall ahead of them. So I kept them in the same order, but now I've moved them up a little bit into my rankings, which we'll get into Wednesday. But I think this was overall the best game we've seen out of Oklahoma with their willingness to change.
I mean, yeah, I guess you're right with what you're saying, and too. And especially it benefited from him because he was part of them just being lost. Penn State lost, Alabama lost. I mean, that's so where they're at. I guess I'm fine with. But what I'm saying is, I agree with what you're saying, but I'm just not really impressed with them this year.
Right. I mean, I think there's a lot they can show that, in my eyes, your eyes, and a lot of voters' eyes, they can be a lot better. And I'm interested to see if, with this Caleb Williams at the helm, if that changes, if this team turns around, their offense gets even better, the defense feeds off that energy and they get better. I'm wanting to see if that changes up here. Both teams have difficult matchups coming up potentially that we'll get to on Thursday's show. Oklahoma State coming into Texas, nearing top 5 it's a top 25 matchup. Oklahoma State creeping near the top 10 is in the undefeated Big 12 squad right now. Then Oklahoma has an ever so dangerous TCU squad, and it's in TCU, so it's an interesting game, and you want to see if they keep this young quarterback and if he performs. We'll talk about that, though, on Thursday's show. Let's get into our final game, the game of the week, Iowa-Penn State. 23-20, the Hawkeyes take home the win, and this is a game I think Penn State had in the bag, and then Sean Clifford goes down. Why don't you guys talk about this? Is your guys' team. Yeah. I'll give the stats real quick, then I will let you guys go ahead right with it. Penn State offensively, Sean Clifford, 2 interceptions, 146 yards. Taquan Robertson, 34 yards, 2 interceptions. Sean Clifford had the rushing touchdown for you. Noah Kane had the other one. Rushing game couldn't find anything going. Keandre Lambert-Smith, 61 yards, your leading wide receiver. Dotson only had 48, but I think you kind of knew that coming in against this difficult defense on Iowa side, but I think Penn State's defense showed the willingness to fight right along with them. They had 3 sacks on the day with the interception as well. But on the flip side of this, Iowa just played a little bit better. Petras had 195 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and an interception. Goodson on the ground, they decided to feed him, and it worked to perfection. 88 yards for him on the ground, averaging 3.5 yards per carry. Nico Reganey had 73 yards receiving as their leading wide receiver with a touchdown. Charlie Jones also had a touchdown reception as well. Jack Corner, one of the best defenders on this Iowa squad, had an interception with 4 tackles. Matt Hankins had an interception. Justin Jacobs with the interception. Riley Moss with an interception. This was a great game, I think, defensively for Iowa, but a great game defensively for Penn State, and a game that if you have your starting quarterback the whole way through, Penn State can probably pull it out. Take it away, guys.
They do win. I say they win with Clifford in. I mean, they put too much on that defense. They relied on them too much. When Clifford went down, Robertson came in, and everybody's saying, "Oh, Robertson sucks." Even I said it during the game at one point. But he's a young quarterback, and he was thrown into this hostile environment, and he didn't even know he was going to play. And when you're thrown into that like that, I mean, it's hard to be successful. And he had 2 interceptions as well, like you said. But I think the defense almost pulled it out. They were up 20-10, early in the fourth quarter, and they had the will to hold on, but just time falls through, and you run out of gas. Especially with that young quarterback. But I say, Clifford was definitely the difference. Even Kirk Herbstreit on game day was talking about it. He is the difference. He can use his legs to get out of the pocket, and he can also throw downfield, and he was a huge loss for them.
And I think, Matt, I know some people talk about the inconsistencies with Clifford, which I understand. There has been some with him, but I think this finally shows how important he is to our team.
Yeah.
I mean, and you even talk about with Robinson. I don't even know if I put it all on him anyways, because the offensive line really – I mean, I know there was some mix-up with the calls and the cadences in terms of snapping the ball, but they didn't help him out either. Mm-hmm. But Joe Clark kept saying on the broadcast, hey, they keep clapping the ball to try to – clapping their hands to try to snap the ball. They need to change it up and get him, actually using a cadence. So that was something to look at. But I don't know. Overall, I mean, you only lose by 3 without your starting quarterback. I'll take it, I guess.
Yeah.
Because
I say, take the bye week, get Clifford ready, get him healthy, and then go beat Illinois.
Get ready
for the Buckeyes, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what you got to do at this moment. It's look ahead time. You can't afford to lose again. James Franklin has a history of not revealing big injuries with players. The only thing he will do is confirm or deny whether or not this will be season ending when it comes out. And I think because of that fact that it was a 3-point loss to a top 2 team in the country, Iowa now up to number 2 as they well-deserved spot, beating the number 4 team. But now you look at Penn State's biggest loss. That's the best loss out of any one-loss team in the country, I think, when you look at Ohio State or Alabama, the other 2 contenders, in the fact that Penn State lost to the number 2 team, Ohio State lost to the number 8 team, and Alabama lost to the number 21 team. So Penn State has that benefit of, so long as Iowa doesn't lose, of continuing to stay in that top 10 with that one loss. So long as Penn State wins out, they're back up there in the conversation, no question. But I think one takeaway from this game was bring in Taquan Robertson. Matt, as you were saying, all they hate on him, oh, this guy sucks. Keep in mind, this was a guy that hadn't played before, and he's your only other quarterback, as James Franklin was trying to get some transfer in the past season. Nobody wanted to go to Penn State to be their quarterback, with Sean Clifford as clearly being the guy of that offense. So you were left with one guy in that quarterback room, and Taquan Robertson got pulled into the middle of a slugfest against the number 1 defense or number 2 defense in the entire nation in an absolute slobber knocker of a fight that what are you going to do? It's like throwing Matt Morrison up against Tyson Fury. He stood no chance in that game, right? You throw this guy into the ring against a hungry dog in Iowa who is now fighting their way back in. The defense can only hold on for so long. And Iowa, on the other hand, just finally saw their opportunity, and they capitalized.
James Franklin talked about this in his post-game press conference after the game. It didn't help that every time they started a drive, it was deep in their own territory. So that definitely didn't help a young quarterback. On top of that, with all the false start penalties, and like you said, coming into an environment like that where, he's probably prepared to play. He was preparing all week like backups do, but you're not expecting to play unless there is an injury, and that's what happened. So there was a lot of things that didn't help him in this game, and that's why they lost. But you only lose by 3. That's on the road in a game that, like we said was going to be a slugfest, and it was. So obviously I wanted to win it, but I guess you could say it's a moral victory, I guess. Because like you said, it is probably the best loss so far in college football.
Yeah, as we're talking about it, I do have to point out the fact that since Iowa's and Pittsburgh's jerseys look so similar, it definitely looks like Matt's wearing an Iowa Hawkeyes jersey. I just have to point it out.
I was thinking that.
Matt, you flipping teams already on him?
No.
All right, so let's get down our final segment here of Monday's show, their newer award of the week. Matt, why don't you hand this one out? This week's Beast of the Week, baby!
All right, so I kind of went a little different on this one. I mean, it wasn't really the beast play, but I think it was more of he got knocked down and came back up kind of play. The kicker for
Green Bay.
The kicker for Green Bay, Mason Crosby. He missed 2 field goals in the game, and then came back in overtime and came in clutch and hit that game-winning field goal.
Actually, Matt.
Oh yeah, he missed 3. That's right.
He
missed 3 in a row. And, get knocked down like that and still come in and, they still rely on him. They still put the game in his hands, even though he missed 3. And then he finally got it in overtime and won the game. I think that's a beast moment.
You can hear Aaron Rodgers back him up after this. He's like, hey, it's Mason Crosby as good as it gets. We knew if we got him in this position that he was going to win the game for us. So, it was good to see, him make that kick and his teammate pick him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was. And, why don't we give an honorable mention to the absolute beast of a fighter that Tyson Fury is? Another beast of this past weekend, Tyson Fury. But we talked Fury already. So
I try to give the beast of the week out to the not likely guy that's going to be a beast. A guy that's been down and out. So I give it to Bobby Wagner. This guy's been out for a long time. And to do what he did, that's at his age, that's awesome. The same thing with me.
Matt, when are you going to give Beast of the Week to Travion Henderson, Ohio State? Man, he's been racking it up. Or Kennedy Brooks, 236 yards in that last game. You had a lot of guys to pick from. So with the NFL kicker,
I was gonna give it. I came close to giving it to the Auburn quarterback. A week or so ago, but no, Jason Hill, but it was a better play. But
all right. Well, thank you all for tuning in once again to the Casual Sports Podcast. We're here all week on YSNLive.com, 2 to 3 p.m. Tomorrow, we're going with Matt and I's high school recap from our 2 games this past weekend. We're talking Monday Night Football recap. Then we're going to get into the rest of the NFL weekend. We're going to check back into the MLB postseason and talk about the start of the NHL tomorrow night. At the moment, Brewers and Braves still tied in the 5th. So, great baseball matches. Make sure to tune into those too. Make sure to tune in to Power Hour next year on YSNLive.com. I'm Alec. That's Matt. And the other one's Mike. We'll see you all next time here on YSNLive.com.